Exercise 13, June 1999, page 406. Let's start. We started reforming our electricity bylaws, and these efforts have had some effect. If you look at the overall generation scenario further, we may find that peaking shortage is met by hydro generation ratio of thermal and hydro generations as against the ideal ratio of 40% hydro generation and 60% thermal generation. Today we have only 25% hydro generation and 35% thermal generation, nuclear generation being very marginal out of about 130,000 MW of hydro potential. We have been able to exploit only 14%. We are still beset with high transmission and distribution losses, which are well above the world average. We are running losses at about 21 to 23%, although efforts at improving the electricity scenario over the last 7 to 8 years have resulted in improved plant load factor from 55% to about 65% para. We have had growth in electricity generation on a regular basis, but a lot more needs to be done. We all know that electricity has three main aspects, namely generation, transmission, and distribution. The reforms which were carried from 1991 onwards focused mainly on generation aspects of the electricity scenario because of inadequacy of state funding. The entry of private sector was sought. The electricity laws were amended. We sent delegations all over the world inviting private participation in our power sector. Some people did venture to come in. We gave them special facilities. We all of them fast track projects para. The experience of these fast track projects over the last 7 years have been very dismal. Firstly, we focused on generation and neglected the other important aspect, that is the transmission and the distribution aspect. Even in generation, the situation is pathetic. In the 8th plan, against a target of over 30,000 MW, we could achieve only 16,400 MW against the expectation of the private sector participation to the extent of 2,800 MW. We could get only 1,400 MW. The private sector is not rushing headlong to invest in this country, unlike what my friends in the left or the Swadeshi Jagaran Manch might think. The investment will go only where there is a reasonable return. Therefore, having neglected the important transmission and distribution sectors, there have been serious distortions in the present set up of electricity availability. There are frequent outages. The frequency and voltage are off the standard, resulting in equipment burning out. Timely power is not being given to industrialists and agriculturists. A major distortion has come in just now. The minister informed us that there is an availability of surplus power and availability of generating capacity in certain parts of the country, but we are not able to evacuate that power because of lack of adequate bulk transmission facilities. Therefore, major initiatives are needed. Para. even the last government in their common minimum action plan for power set out certain priorities. One of the priorities of that document was that transmission sector would be considered as an independent activity, and then we would see that private investment comes in transmission. Where the ninth plan also looked at the overall energy scenario, energy being a very important sector of the infrastructure. They laid emphasis on completing the incomplete projects, improving the plant load factor, reducing the transmission and distribution losses, reforms in electricity laws, institutional reforms, and also sought to improve the hydel and thermal mix pair. An important focus was also on creation of high capacity inter-regional transmission lines. The important objective of the ninth plan was to shift the emphasis from regional and state level grid control to national integrated grid operation. Of course, the laws were sought to be made for simplifying investment through private sector, both indigenous and foreign, and captive power generation was also to be encouraged. All these were good objectives, but unfortunately the ninth plan document is in doldrums. I think the Bharatiya Janata Party is now again looking at it and wants to review and reform it. I am afraid it may not see the light of day. Para. According to the Raj Adhyak's committee, about which the Honorable Minister has referred to, the ideal investment mix is for every rupee that you spend for generation, a rupee should be spent for transmission and distribution in equal promotion. But unfortunately, right from the fourth plan, we need not go beyond that. The investment in transmission and distribution, which has 47% of the total investment in the fourth plan, it has been coming down steadily for the fifth plan. Onwards, in the fifth plan, it was 39%. In the sixth, seventh, and eighth plan, it has been steady at about 30%. A great distortion has set in. Stop. Thank you. Exercise 3, September 1991, page 589, book number K. Let's start. Mr. Chairman, sir, I would like to express my views on demands for grants of Ministry of Labour and Welfare presented by the Honorable Minister. I will express my views regarding Department of Welfare, particularly about those tribal sub-plan areas where welfare schemes are being implemented as stated by the Honorable Minister. About rupees 16,000 crore have been spent on these tribal sub-plans, but the results have not been satisfactory in proportion to the expenditure incurred. It is a fact that those people for whom these plans have been formulated have no knowledge about it. Because of illiteracy, the government has not formulated any schemes to provide education to them. If such schemes had at all been formulated, the middlemen had created hurdles in the proper implementation of these schemes, and people did not get desired benefits from these schemes. Need of the hour is to make education more effective. If it is done only, then people will be able to desire maximum benefits from these schemes. Otherwise, this will remain on paper only. Crores of rupees will be spent on them, and these people will remain undeveloped as before. Therefore, it is necessary to pay special attention towards education. Anganwadi system has been introduced in the field of education. If this system is monitored at the initial stage, all round development of a child could be ensured, and these schemes will become popular. But these schemes are still being neglected. The officers are not taking interest in the proper implementation of these schemes at present. The people of villages and panchayats have no role in these schemes. They should be involved in these schemes. The officers engaged in this are working arbitrarily, and they do not bother about local conditions. Local people should also be involved in these schemes, because if it is done at the initial stage and if these schemes are implemented properly in backward and far-flung areas, they can become popular. Para. Several schools and colleges have been opened at various places, but they are not of required standard. It is also a mockery that where schools are available, children are not coming for education, and where children want to study, schools are not available. They are being taught under the shade of a tree. At many places, teachers and lecturers are not available, and set up is also not discipline-wise. At some places, only one teacher is available, and he alone teaches all the 5 classes. Para. Sir, I was saying that we should pay special attention towards the workers in the unorganized sector or the rural areas, because they are in a very large number and are victims of injustice. Neither they have medical facilities nor do they have any job guarantee. Now our government has decided to include the right to work in the fundamental rights granted under the Constitution. It would be a revolutionary and historic step if this is done, and I am sure it will be done soon. Then the National Front government would be remembered forever as long as the sun and moon are there. This country's youth will remember forever that the National Front government had included the right to work in the fundamental rights granted under the Constitution. Para. Mr. Chairman said, now I would like to say something regarding the handicapped people, as we are discussing the demands for grants for the Ministry of Welfare, and this subject comes under its purview. Sir, it is a matter of grief that our country has the largest population of the blind people in the world. 1/5 of the world population lives in India, so also 1/3 of the blind population in the world also lives in India. It is because our country is poor and malnutrition is a major problem here. As far as protein intake is concerned, if the per capita consumption is mere 40 grams of pulses, it is but natural for any country to have such a large number of blind people. What arrangements have we made for 1 crore blind people living in this country? In the entire country, there is a single institute for training the blind that is the National Institute of Visually Handicapped at Dehradun. Is one institute adequate for the 1 crore blind people of this country? This was established for namesake by the previous government. It was done with the aim of showing the world that India has a national institute to look after its blind population. The mockery about it is that the National Institute is not having a director for the past 1 year. A blind but very capable director was wrongfully removed by the previous government, and since then that institute is without a director. Thus, a cruel joke is being played on the blind people. 11 centers were opened across the country for the rehabilitation of these blind people. They have not done any work. The previous government made an assessment of these centers through the Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and the report presented by them says that these centers are not doing anything worthwhile. Stop. Thank you. June 1999, page 422, exercise 25, book number 5. Let's start. Sir, the national agenda for governance to which the present government is fully committed in the 23rd paragraph solemnly promises that we will set up a national judicial commission which will recommend judicial appointments in the high courts and the Supreme Court and draw up a report of ethics for the judiciary. The background of this proposal is well known. The earlier constitutional interpretation that the executive was paramount in the decision-making process relating to appointments and transfers was inconsistent with judicial independence and produced deadlock. The new interpretation vesting paramount powers in the judicial branch, that is the judicial family itself, has also failed of its purpose. Questionable appointments have seeped through the hole in this process as well. General opinions in the country have therefore veered round to a third alternative, namely the Judicial Commission composed of all relevant elements, including the leader of the opposition, which will have exclusive powers of appointments and transfers as well as removal. The impracticable procedure of impeachment will be displaced. Sir, every judge and practitioner at the bar has come to know that there is currently a deadlock in judicial appointments, even though judicial appointments are urgently required to be made. Everybody knows that some extremely worthy appointments are held up because they are presented as a part of a package in which some questionable appointments are mixed up. It is equally well known that the consultation procedure laid down by the Supreme Court itself, to which even the learned present Chief Justice is a party, is not being properly followed. Sir, I may tell this honorable House and take it into confidence, it is a matter of great importance that even on the present process, which is currently in operation, at least 5 or 6 serious disputes have arisen. Question is whether the consultation by the Chief Justice should be with only 2 judges or should be with the 5 senior-most judges of his own court. The second is whether matter regarding which the government has come reservations should be considered by the Chief Justice alone or along with other 2 or 5 judges. Thirdly, whether the government is entitled to know the views of the other judges which are to be transmitted by the Chief Justice along with his views whether these are 2 or 5, or fourthly, whether consultation by the Chief Justice of India with 2 senior-most is necessary in respect of the transfer of Chief Justices or judges in keeping with the principle of collective opinion. Sir, these questions have to be decided. That happened was that I came to know sometime last week, and this was confirmed by the learned Attorney General on the night of the 17th when I happened to meet him, that a public interest litigation has already been filed in the Supreme Court by a lawyer by the name of Mr. Gupta, in which he seeks the relief of mandamusing the government to make all appointments as recommended by the Chief Justice of India. Obviously, this matter is now sub judice. The hearing is fixed for the 28th of this month, and I am quite sure that the Attorney General and other lawyers will appear and make their submissions to the court and the Supreme Court, either in the 2-judge bench which has been constituted, or may be a larger bench in view of the constitutional importance of these grave questions will decide that issue. Sir, on behalf of the government, I wish to make it clear that the government respects the Constitution. The government respects the current constitutional interpretations put by the Supreme Court itself in the decision of 4 or 5 years ago, known as the Supreme Court Advocate Association versus Shaw. And so the government will not refuse to implement that decision unless that decision is reserved by a constitutional amendment, creating a National Judicial Commission, or by some other methods. Ultimately, when the consultative process is fully satisfied, even according to the current procedure, the government will be totally bound by the respectful opinion of the judiciary itself. But sir, I wish to say, and this was a subject matter of comment, that why did Mr. Jethmalani speak? I was delivering a keynote address at an organization of the Lawyers of India organized by the Bar Council of India, and sir, I have not lost my right to even impress upon my own government that in our national agenda, to which we are publicly committed, we have pledged ourselves to creating of a National Judicial Commission. In view of some of the deficiencies that have come to light, now my government should take steps on a priority basis to implement that part of the agenda. Ultimately, if the government cannot implement its own agenda, the government has to come back to this house and seek 2/3 majority of it, gets it with your concurrence and with your cooperation. The government will proceed in accordance with the wishes of both houses of parliament. The government is not going to act in an arbitrary